Hey everyone, Brendan Leslie of FLConservativeVoice.com. We're sitting next to the Lieutenant Governor of Florida, Jeanette Nunez. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Brendan. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
Now, the first thing I want to kind of get into is just what is it about the Governor DeSantis leadership in your administration that resonates so well with Florida and honestly across America?
Well, I think when you are talking about issues from the context and from the perspective of freedom, preserving people's liberties, that's something that resonates across the board. And I think what you've seen, especially during COVID, but not just with COVID issues, is throughout. Floridians are so proud of a governor that fights for them. And he's not going to back down. He's not going to let the mainstream media bully him. And I think those are some of the traits that people really, really appreciate in their governor.
Do you feel that the mainstream media kind of ignores you because they know that you go against a lot of their narratives?
Well, I don't necessarily feel ignored. I have encountered their ire from time to time. But at the end of the day, when you're doing things from a place of principles and convictions, I could care less what they say. I know what I stand for. The governor knows what he stands for, and we're going to continue to fight.
I mean, we see it all the time that they are trying to just take you down with, we like to call them blue onion conspiracies. I mean, the most recent one being how he failed to condemn anti-Semitism when you guys are in fact actually signed, the governor signed the strongest anti-Semitism bill in the nation. When you see things like that, I notice a trend. It's like every 2 weeks, Nikki Fried or somebody's got to amplify some blue onion conspiracy, and then they collude with the media, and then it goes rampant on social media. What is your take with that?
Well, that's indicative of why every year you see trust in the media is continuing to dwindle. And it's because they push these fake narratives and they try to create these issues that just don't exist. When you're talking facts, you're talking about a governor that is the most pro-Israel governor in the country. And I can say that because I've been there alongside him as we have fought to make sure the BDS movement does not gain hold. We have fought to make sure that our Jewish day schools have historic amounts of funding to be able to protect their young boys and girls. We have fought the Ben and Jerry's of the world, making sure that we hold companies accountable. And so all of these things combined show that he truly cares about policy, substance, and not headlines and not nonsense, which is what the mainstream media is all about.
It seems that all those facts that you just listed go out the window when there's something like this. Why didn't he rush to go condemn these 12 losers that just, stood on the side of the road besides?
They will always have something that they want him to condemn. They will always have something that they want him to speak on. And he's going to stick to his agenda. And his agenda, amongst the many things that we're working on, is making sure that we provide an environment where people can have their liberties, where people can feel safe to live in a state like Florida, where we back the blue, where we make sure that we are providing individuals with the ability to raise their family, have their kids go to school, open a business, thrive in the economy. And so those are things that he wants to talk about. But yet they always want to harp on one particular circumstance. The governor, his record is clear, both as governor and as congressman before that. He stands with our friends in Israel and those that live in the state.
But hang on, I thought you guys were the fascists.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
There's always more from them. It's ridiculous. When you hear assertions and you hear silly comments like Nikki Fried trying to be relevant, it really is disgusting, the things that she's said. And nobody holds her accountable, but who cares? Because we stand on the side of history and we stand doing what's right.
Does she do anything? Is she actually doing her job, or is she just being paid by the taxpayers to campaign for her governor run?
Well, I assure you, she doesn't know the difference between a strawberry and a snap pea. So I think that there's something to be said about doing your job, the current job you have, and doing it well. And I don't know one person in the agriculture industry that is flocking to Nikki Fried's gubernatorial campaign.
I mean, there's so much more to that position, the Department of Agriculture. What kind of issues does that cause with your administration, having someone like Nikki that just refuses to just do her job and work with your administration?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Sadly, her department oversees concealed weapons permits. Mm-hmm. And so she drags her feet because she has an anti-Second Amendment agenda.
People are waiting months.
Yes, months. I just talked to someone the other day that said he's been waiting 7 months. So clearly she has an agenda. It is a very radical agenda. And so she uses her position, she uses her office to promote the things that she wants and to dissuade the things that she doesn't. So again, I think that when the voters speak on this coming election in November, they will speak loudly in favor of Governor DeSantis, but I don't even think she makes it through the primary.
Neither do I, which is the crazy thing. She's going to lose to a former Republican who's just so out of touch. But that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. I want to talk more about how your administration is playing offense. And really, Christina Pushaw, the press secretary for the governor, is leading the way with that. What do you have to say about the work she's been doing?
She is, someone that is always making sure that the governor's agenda is front and center. I think she is active. She is willing to confront issues. And I think she does a great job for the governor, and really do. I know that she has been so active on Twitter, and we really appreciate her work. As you know, the governor has a very bold agenda. We are constantly looking at ways to ensure that we're protecting people's liberties, making sure that our economy is thriving, making sure our education is top notch. And there are so many issues that we're dealing with right now during this legislative session, everything from election integrity to making sure that our kids are not indoctrinated in schools. I'm a mom of 3. I've seen it. I've lived it. I have 2 in the university setting, 1 in 10th grade. So for me, that's something really important. And the governor really does focus on issues that impact people's everyday lives. And that's why anywhere we go, whether I'm with him or by myself, I have people come up to me and tell me, thank the governor for me. Tell him, you guys are doing a great job. We're so proud to be Floridians. And you cannot lie. The numbers are what they are. #1 state in terms of net migration. We are really the state that everyone's flocking to in order to, again, live your life, have your freedoms, grow your business, make sure that you can continue to thrive. And that's what Florida stands for.
And we really are seeing, going back to the CRT point, we are seeing an increase of critical race theory teachings being done, especially in our universities. At FL Conservative Voice, we had a whistleblower student that came to us and took a picture of what was being taught in her class at Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. And it was a slide of Governor DeSantis and President Trump, and it said, how can 2 conservatives, anti-climate deniers, anti-vaxxers, blah, 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 have normal offspring? It was a picture of DeSantis and Trump. So we reported it, we put it out there, and guess what? A week later, teacher was fired.
Well, that's great. That's unusual, because I'll tell you, it happens more often than people think. Yeah. And like I said, I've lived it through the eyes of my children, both in the university setting, and I think it's a concerning thing. And when you see, the vast majority of parents want their children to learn, reading and writing, and dare I say arithmetic. But what you're seeing now is an agenda that is so embedded with critical race. It's so embedded with actually socialism, Marxism. I think my family history. My parents fled communist Cuba in 1961. They came to this great country. And for them, liberty and freedom and democracy was so important, because we take the freedoms that we have for granted. But I can tell you that from the perspective of people that lost those freedoms virtually overnight, it is scary how quickly your freedoms and your liberties can erode. And those are some of the concerning, alarming signs that I see in other states, which is why I'm so proud to stand alongside Governor DeSantis and make sure that Florida stays free.
And we're seeing a mass migration of the Hispanic community going from left to the right. Why is that?
Well, I think several things. Hispanics, no matter where they come from, they care about a handful of things: faith, family, and freedom. Those are the 3 things that I always talk about. And they truly are the foundation.
Fascists. That's what the media says. That's what the left says.
Well, they could say all they want, but they truly care about those foundational principles. They want to make sure, no matter if you've been here 7 generations or your first generation, they want to make sure that their children have opportunities to succeed. There is nothing that a Hispanic doesn't want to see more than their children prospering and being more successful than them. So for my parents, it was the ultimate privilege to be able to witness me being inaugurated as lieutenant governor. That was forever a really special moment for me and my family. And so when you think of the things that we care about, and when you think of the things that all Floridians care about, truly all Americans, they want to be able to make sure their kids have a great opportunity to learn, to succeed, to either build a business or have a career. And they also care about faith, and I'm a strong woman of faith, and they want to be able to practice that faith. So we refuse to shut down churches, unlike many other states. That was something that I think Hispanics in particular really appreciated. And ultimately, freedom. As I mentioned before, in so many of those Hispanic countries of origin, many Floridians hailed from, They saw how quickly those freedoms eroded. They saw the rhetoric of the left. And so socialism is a scary thing, but it's a real thing for Hispanics. And when you see the disastrous policies of someone like Joe Biden, his disastrous policies at the border, the debacle in Afghanistan, the economic disastrous policies, we understand that all too well. And when you see all of the economic impacts, all of the issues, and something that I touched on earlier, election integrity, we firmly believe in that. We believe that you absolutely should show an ID to have to vote. We believe that there should be no fraud in our elections because, once you lose the sanctity and the integrity of the election, everything goes downhill from there.
Were you worried that there was any concerns with this past election in Florida?
I mean, of course I'm worried. I think Florida did a great job. The governor has said that. And obviously, we want to always be vigilant. I think those are some of the things that we continue to focus on, which is why you see some of our election integrity proposals that are making their way through the legislature and we hope will ultimately become law.
Now, back to the Hispanic point, talking about how they're moving to the right. I want to hear your thoughts about the term Latinx. Is that even how
do you
say
really
it?
want to hear
I
it? Do you
absolutely
really want
to hear it.
I detest.
I've been actually wanting to ask you this question forever.
I detest that term. It is offensive to me. It butchers the Spanish language by doing so. And if you ask the vast majority of Hispanics, not a one of them identifies as Latinx. So this woke focus on removing everything that they can in order to, to fit the confines of wokeness and to be more woke than the next person. And so I think they themselves have realized when you've got the Herald editorial board telling you drop the term, it's hurting you.
Yeah.
I think that says something. And so it really does bother me. And, people can be upset at me all they want, but I stand strongly against the term Latinx.
Well, what's really funny? It's always the white liberals
that
are using that term. It's almost as if they feel like they're superior to you and that they have to label you a certain way. Indeed.
Well, I've been criticized by an editorial writer that, I've lost my Hispanicness and I shouldn't even...
Oh, who was it?
Oh, Fabiola Santiago.
Oh,
I don't even want to mention her because she's not worthy of
How many times has Fabiola Santiago made our top 5 fake news reporter list? So we keep track of these reporters every single week. Every Monday we post a new ranking. Top 5 is just the most ridiculous asinine reports that we see out of leftist media. And Fabiola Santiago,
I don't even know how she's still there. I mean, she said some really terrible things about supporters of the governor. Hope they die.
Yep.
You've lost your mind when you say things like that.
Well, they peg us all as insurrectionists, and especially me as someone as a reporter that covered January 6th. Oh my God, I couldn't get out. That's all the left wants to paint me as, even though I never broke a single law.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure that anyone that is associated with President Trump and Ron DeSantis, they're a white supremacist, they're an insurrectionist, all this jazz. How do we kind of combat all that?
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. When you see the electoral votes at the end of the day, when you see how resoundingly we are going to win in November, I think that we will have our moment, and the left is going to have to, eat crow, basically.
And then with the left, it's amazing to even think that President Biden is actually the leader of the left. I don't even know if he's actually...
I don't even know if he knows he's the leader of the left.
It's kind of brutal, but nonetheless, he is impacting Florida as much as he can. Do you think he's playing political games when it comes to cutting off the monoclonal treatments?
Absolutely. And anyone that says anything to the contrary is just a liar. First of all, when we were successful and we educated the public and we had so many people going to our sites, getting access to this life-saving treatment, it was like, oh no, now the federal government has to come and control it, even though they've clearly said there is no federal solution to COVID. And then in one fell swoop, they decide to overnight basically say, no, we're not going to let the physicians determine if that's a good treatment. And so for them to cut it off from one day to the next, no warning, thousands of people left stranded, many of them probably didn't even know their appointments were canceled. And I can tell you, so many people were clamoring for monoclonal. And while, the argument is, the data, the clinical data that they claim they have, which wasn't done in a true clinical study style fashion, I think that it's irresponsible of them. You should allow, if you're all about the science, which they claim that they are, clearly only when it's convenient to their narrative, then let the physicians make that determination. Let them prescribe the medicines they want to prescribe. Let them recommend the treatments that are available. It is unthinkable for them to do that overnight. So we're going to continue to push back. The governor has obviously been talking about this quite a bit. I'm trying to get some of my fellow lieutenant governors, Republican lieutenant governors, to also raise the issue from their prospective states. But I think it really is a problem when you're playing politics with people's lives.
Do you think President Biden is being cynical in a way that he hopes that Florida starts to struggle and that he can go around and say then, hey, should have got vaccinated?
Well, I hope not, but we'll see, because I think ultimately when they talk about, the side effects, well, there's side effects to vaccine. When they talk about the effectiveness, well, you and I both know so many people vaccinated, boosted, even very famous members of Congress that like to party at, drag queen brunches in Miami.
Hey, guess who wrote that story? That was FLConservativeVoice.com.
It sure was. Kudos to you. But, clearly the effectiveness, I've always said you have to have honest conversations with people. Whether you're talking about the effectiveness of the vaccine, people can make a decision whether they want to get it or not. And for some people, it's a good choice. For others, it's not. When you're talking about the efficacy of masks, for students in particular, oftentimes I was interviewed during those months where the governor was battling on those mask mandates in schools. And again, I'm a mom. My 15-year-old, at the beginning of the pandemic, I would see all these kids with these masks on, and they were under their chin, had them half off. I'm like, let's be honest. Unless you're using a N95 mask, those masks are ineffective. And when you use the neck gaiters that you can basically see through, those offer no protection.
Wait. You're a conspiracy theorist. It's now 6 months later, and now we're not conspiracy theorists. That's usually how it goes.
Exactly. Because they, the governor will say something, they'll make him out to, be this horrible person, making all these lies up.
How
and
annoying
then,
is that?
Guess what? He was right.
The biggest one being when he suggested that COVID seems to be seasonal.
Indeed.
And when it was only in Florida, when we were seeing the spike, because we have different seasons compared to the Northeast, that's when the media was all over it. But then the second you saw the spike in the Northeast, the blue states, all of a sudden, the seasonal theory is true. I mean,
it's just, it's absurd. And that's, again, why people continue to distrust the mainstream media. Whenever Florida's doing well, you don't hear word one. Whenever there's a surge because of seasonality, new variant, or what the case may be, then that's all they want to talk about, Florida and all the deaths that are occurring. Mind you, when you parcel out the data, when you look at the information from an honest perspective, not with an agenda, not with a spin, and not with a narrative, you'll see that Florida's done extremely well.
It's almost like, I mentioned this earlier, it's almost like every 2 weeks we're seeing a new manufactured fake crisis, and then it's being amplified by the media. And Nikki Fried is really leading the way on that. And I was really, really upset to see that Southwest Florida's own NBC2, Dave Elias, put out a story about you guys stored away 1 million COVID tests and you were hiding them from the public. You let them get expired. Just what kind of damage does that do when a reporter is just lazy and dumb and doesn't put out the facts?
Let's be clear. Nikki Fried doesn't lead the way on anything. However,
I don't even know if that's a compliment. She leads the way on being a liar, pretty much.
There you go. However, again, I think that reporters should want to uncover the truth. I think that is the ultimate goal of your profession. But to your point, a lot of reporters are lazy. They just regurgitate what they hear. They don't take the time to truly understand the issue. So they're just looking for clickbait. They're just looking for opportunities to spin their narratives. And it is what it is. I mean, there's really not much we can do about it other than continue to focus on the issues, continue to focus on the truth, and not let fear overrun our facts.
And what are some of your biggest goals as Lieutenant Governor moving forward, going towards re-election?
Yeah, well, we've been focused on a lot of things. It feels like all we ever talk about is COVID. That's all the media ever wants to talk about. But we have big goals for our administration. A lot of them you hear the governor talk about, the environment, education, and whatnot. As Lieutenant Governor, I get the privilege to serve as chair over Space Florida, which is a tremendous boon to our economy. You've seen so much growth, commercial growth in that space. No pun intended. Also oversee cyber. I think there's a lot we need to do and focus to make sure Florida is cyber resilient, that we are ahead of the curve as it relates to the bad actors. I also work very closely with the Department of Health. So besides COVID, we want to make sure that we are providing people with the right tools to be able to live healthier lives in the context of their overall health and well-being. And then, of course, working with the governor and making sure we promote our agenda that covers everything from elections to environment to education. The one thing I will tell you, it's my latest soapbox, is making sure that our kids are not indoctrinated, making sure that there is not this incredible bias being built into everything. And I can tell you, you would find it in places you wouldn't expect. So, you expect
it in Babcock Ranch in Charlotte County,
absolutely,
which is a very Republican-based town.
Indeed. And then lastly, I will tell you the one project that is sort of something I'm very passionate about is combating human trafficking, which ties in very directly to the crisis at the border. Nobody wants to talk about that. So I serve on the statewide council. I'm involved in a number of initiatives around human trafficking and combating that, making sure Florida is leading the way on many things that we're doing here, again, with the great leadership from the governor. But, when you see the crisis at the border, they don't want to talk about all the individuals that are being smuggled for purposes of human trafficking, sexual exploitation. And you're seeing an uptick, and you're seeing hundreds of thousands of people vis-a-vis the previous year that are going through that border because of Biden, because of his disastrous policies. And unfortunately, that is only going to create an uptick in human trafficking activity. So people that, want to sort of belittle the crisis, they are missing the big picture.
It's amazing how quickly President Biden responded to Ukraine's borders, as
certainly.
opposed to our own.
Yeah, well, he needs a crisis to divert some of the sinking pole numbers and the overall economic disaster he has here in the country.
Perhaps protect the 10% for the big guy?
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez, thank you very much for joining us on
FLConservativeVoice.com.
FLConservativeVoice.com.
Always a pleasure.